We're going to play this clip from Donald Trump campaigning in New Hampshire over the weekend. And I hope you're sitting down because this clip is pretty horrifying.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be, and then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we...
You know, I don't know what to say about this clip. It seems to me that Trump is bordering, is heading into fascist, Nazi territory. You just heard the clip about immigrants poisoning the blood of our nation. That was at a campaign appearance in New Hampshire over the weekend. Previously, he had identified his political enemies as vermin. Of course, he announced a couple of weeks ago that he planned to be a dictator on day one of his presidency. And this is all horrifying, and it's coming from a man who has, a decent shot of being president of the United States. And I don't know if we've ever had a legitimate candidate for president of the United States who is, traded in fascist and Nazi tropes like that. And to me, it's getting scarier all the time. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, who is the editor-in-chief of PoliticusUSA. Sarah, thanks for joining us again. I want to start out by asking you your reaction to that clip we just played.
Well, thanks for having me, Brad. That clip really horrified me. It's still with me. It kind of haunted me all weekend. And I want to point out because, we've spent a lot of time avoiding comparing Trump to Hitler, even when, there are multiple things when he sided with white nationalism, he was using Nazi tropes. From 2016 on, we have avoided that. But we are at a point now where if we don't make that comparison, and we're not talking about what, Hitler did in the end, but in the lead up to his power and what got him there, this is mirroring that language. Hitler warned against the German blood being poisoned by Jews and migrants in Mein Kampf. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. He's repeating it over and over again to normalize it. It's not like he doesn't know. He already got called out for this. He knows exactly what he's doing. Because just as you pointed out, he said just a month or two ago, called all of his opponents vermin. And I would like to point out that Hitler and Mussolini both compared their enemies to rodents in their rise to power. So what we need to equate this language with is a rise to power. And that's what Trump is doing. I think he knows he has no other path to get back into the White House. And so he's getting more and more desperate. What is making this so dangerous, though, is that, as you pointed out, he's a legitimate candidate. He's polling at the top, way top of everyone else in his party. No one in his party, save for Chris Christie, will call him out. And the media has, by and large, although not everyone, but has normalized this. They should have really been calling this out when he called people vermin. Why does a leader want to dehumanize large sections of the population? It's because you attack democracy by attacking anyone who supports it. So you use words, and we saw this with Hitler, Marxists attacking labor unions, attacking the left, attacking, suspected socialists and communists. All of that is what Hitler did in his rise to power. We see Trump doing that too. And that is all an attack on democracy. So everyone who's thinking, well, I'm not in those lists, most of us actually aren't in those lists, but we are according to Trump. So I would ask everyone who's listening, who doesn't think this is that bad, where is this going? He's not even in power yet. What does he do when he has power? And I think we're seeing some of that in what Republicans are eyeing up for him in terms of the border, because they want to give the president the right to withhold asylum completely. And all of that is leading up to, I think, a lot of violence. It's paving the way for it.
Yeah, it really is. And again, I mean, if you look at polling in the national polls, Trump
Yeah,
is ahead of Haley and DeSantis by more than 30 points. The races are a little bit closer than that in Iowa and New Hampshire, where he's probably got a 20-point lead in both places right now. And, right now, the general election, his national poll showed him essentially in a close race with Joe Biden. So this is not some fringe nutball candidate we're talking about here. This is a guy who could be president. And the more I see of him, the more horrifying that possibility becomes. And I think you're right. I think he keep repeating this, it does normalize it, and people say, "Oh, that's just Trump being Trump." Well, I watched Lindsey Graham on one of the talk shows Sunday, and they asked Graham about this comment, and he just basically put it to the side and said, "Well, sometimes I don't agree with President Trump's language." He should say his language is horrifying and a threat to
right.
American democracy. But no, it's just Donald being Donald again, which
Just
is
like they
that.
said, just like they justified his admission on tape that he's a serial sexual assaulter of women. And guess what? Now he has been found liable for rape. So those words have a lot of meaning, and I think that Republicans whitewash those words very. I honestly, except for Chris Christie, can't think of one of them that doesn't. They were just trying to tell us that when he said he was going to be a dictator on day one, he was just joking. And then cut to, days later, here he is, um, basically quoting Hitler.
Yeah, it's really horrifying. And I think the question is, I think if I was Mitch McConnell, is a good example. I don't know, the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is probably just about as far right as Trump is. So I don't know if it matters, but he should, because the Republicans are in danger of losing the House. The Republicans have a chance to win the Senate. And if I was Mitch McConnell, I don't think McConnell reacted to that statement at all that I'm aware of. And, McConnell should be horrified at the impact that Trump might have on the Republican Party and its chances to take control of the Senate. We're going to have to take a short break now for our radio listeners, but I will be continuing this discussion of Donald Trump, the Republican Party, in the presidential race with our good friend Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC right after this break. For our viewers, and in a couple of minutes for our radio listeners.
I want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. We've been talking about Donald Trump's adventure in fascist and Nazi tropes and how scary it is. Sarah, let me ask you this. National polls show that Trump is probably ahead of his Republican opponents by about 30 points. In Iowa and New Hampshire, the race between him and Haley and DeSantis is a little closer. It's in the verge, area of 20 points. Now, primary polls are remarkably fickle because voters don't fix very much on their primary intentions until like the day before the primary or caucus. Is there still a chance, especially in light of these latest Trump statements, that somebody, Haley or DeSantis, can stop Trump, or are we stuck with him?
Well, you know, this party is embracing Donald Trump. They haven't distanced themselves from him at all. And so I'm not sure they want to stop him. And I don't see anyone up on the debate stage with, well, Trump doesn't even bother to show up, but in the Republican primary debates, who that I believe could actually win Republican voters over at this point. And I keep looking at J.D. Vance and Glenn Youngkin and wondering if, maybe they're just being saved for the VP slot. I don't know, but none of these people. I think there's a lot of hope in the political world for Nikki Haley, but I don't see Republican voters, Trump voters, supporting her. And I think some of them might, but for the most part, no. And I think that's frightening. There really isn't anyone that's going to take Donald Trump on and beat him. I mean, look at Chris Christie. He's out there trying to hold Trump accountable, and he's, dropping. He
A
drops
voice in the
by.
wilderness in the Republican
Yeah,
Party.
yeah. So I don't see any of these folks. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy would be, if possible, worse than Trump. I don't know how to even qualify him. DeSantis is obviously an authoritarian by the way he runs Florida, and he doesn't seem to have any compassion. He has a
Or
penchant for
personality.
cruelty. Yeah, he doesn't have a personality, which is why I don't think he could win a general election for sure. But, they really pushed him on Trump voters. But it's all been, when I speak to Trump voters here, they're not impressed by any of these people. They're addicted to Donald Trump. They're not going to get off the Donald crack. It's not
Yeah.
happening.
I'm afraid you're right about this. We're going to have to take another very short break now to bring back our radio listeners. This is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. We'll be back right after this short message with more of Sarah and more of me, if you can handle it. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. Please check out PoliticusUSA.com. I hope I got the website right. And I just want to make special mention to our radio listeners that if you'd like to watch Deadline DC as well as listen to it, you can do it at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, on facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon, or on YouTube at youtube.com/Deadline DC. We're going to resume our discussion here. We've been talking about Donald Trump going wild, and he's going increasingly wild. Let me ask you this, Sarah. If you look at the national polls again, basically there would be a very close presidential race between Trump and Biden. Trump actually probably has an edge in the Electoral College, which is the vehicle that counts in American politics. And the question is, can somebody like Donald Trump, who's so horrifying and is increasingly horrifying, actually win a second term, in your opinion? Beat Joe Biden?
Well, I want to preface this by saying that anything is possible, right? We saw that in 2016. And we're also seeing Republicans align themselves with Putin and in terms of his war of aggression against Ukraine. And, I keep asking, what are they getting in return for this alignment? Is it just that they hate Joe Biden so much that they want to undermine Western democracy because of it? I don't think so, because in 2016 they weren't running against Joe Biden, and they began to change their platform to be more anti-Ukraine in 2016 at Donald Trump's campaign's behest. So I think we can't underestimate the power that Russia has, not to come in and hack our elections, although we know that they have gotten into our election information, our voting rolls, but rather to exploit these already existing divides. And so when I remember that the power they have of doing that, and I kind of see some of that going on in the Israel Gaza situation. Um, Obviously, people have a lot of strong feelings in both directions, but I'm seeing that raised to such a level online that it brings to mind to me that we were so easily manipulated, and we have been many times, especially online, by rogue actors wanting to exploit these divisions. So, could he win again? Of course he can. He's got a lot of help. He has the help of the Kremlin, and they have a lot of power. Um, a- at least online, they do, and most Americans are online. So, yeah, I think he can win again. I don't think right now.
And Trump used Putin as a character reference
Yes,
recently.
yeah, he did. Um, he cited Putin as his way to criticize Joe Biden, and saying Putin says that, with Joe Biden in charge, it just proves that Western democracy doesn't work, which, of course, what a statement when that's his entire purpose. And that's why he supports Donald Trump, because he knows Donald Trump undermines the West. And that's Putin's goal. So every time I have anyone ask me, can he win again? Yes. I think we would be fools if we don't always prepare for um, what doesn't seem possible at this point, because it happened before. And I would also like to throw in here really quickly, if you could indulge me in this. I'm changing the
Go
topic,
ahead.
but it's kind of the same thing. I want to remind everyone that days before the Capitol riot, Trump's top general, Mark Milley, he reportedly warned people that America was facing its Reichstag moment, because Trump was preaching the gospel of the Fuhrer with his stolen election lies. And so this isn't new. What we're seeing from Trump, this copying Hitler's language, this isn't new. He hasn't been doing it in public maybe so much as he started doing now, but the people who worked with him saw it.
Yeah. Let's move on here. This week for the Messenger, I wrote a column about military aid to Ukraine and Israel. Speaker Michael Johnson, the Republican majority Senate Speaker, adjourned the House without taking an action on a bill to aid Ukraine and Israel. But he did find time to begin an impeachment inquiry against President Biden, which I think is an indication of the
Yeah. Well, we know that Senate Republicans have said that there is be a big surge of migrants at the border once that expired. And that was through the pandemic. And it's something that Trump supporters will cite that it was his policy. Well, it was really a way of closing the border due to the pandemic. So why are they tying, they won't give Biden the money that he needs to deal with the border. Why are they tying aid to Ukraine to the border? It's because, and I believe this is what Brad mentioned.
Yeah, it's kind of scary because, as I pointed out in my column in the Messenger, only one out of every three Americans favor additional aid to both Ukraine and Israel. So this is a really tough package for the president to sell. Well, I want to thank Sarah. Our guest in this half hour has been Sarah Jones, who is editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. If you want to read my column in the Messenger about Israel and Ukraine, you can find it at muckrack.com, all one word, /Brad Bannon. We'll be back with